I can still hear their voices in my sleep. 15 of them, singing about the garment factory, about their mothers, about rivers running through the villages where they grew up. I can still hear their voices in my sleep, calling me, asking me to come back.
আইরে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না আইরে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না সকাল 8টায় অফিস আসি রাতের 10টায় বাসায় ফিরি সকাল 8টায় অফিস আসি রাতের 10টায় বাসায় ফিরি আগে জানলে করতাম না চাকরি রে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না এই রে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না সকাল বিকাল পটাক শোনে বকা দে পিএম সারে
Bangladesh was never on my list. I didn't know much about it or had any desire to go. I always thought I wanted to go to India one day, typical destination for a traveller, but I never thought about Bangladesh. I got a phone call one day from a curator inviting me to go to Dhaka to participate in an artist workshop organised by an artist-run space called Brito. I didn't think twice. Any opportunity to get on a plane and go to faraway places to create work is always appealing for a young artist. It was a last-minute call. I only had a couple of weeks to prepare myself for the trip. Just enough time to arrange my visa, get my vaccinations, and pack my bags. When I got on that plane, I still didn't know anything about Bangladesh. After travelling on a plane full of men and only about 6 women, including myself, I arrived to Dhaka in a complete state of culture shock. Not only was I dealing with that, but also, as soon as I left the airport, I realised that the city was swarming with demonstrations. They were known as the Shava protests, named after the neighbourhood where they were taking place. The demonstration started as a peaceful protest, demanding capital punishment for the members of the Jamaat-e-Islami party who committed crimes against humanity in the genocide that happened during the Liberation War in 1971, when Bangladesh was established as a republic and won its independence from Pakistan. As the protesters held day and night vigils at Shaba, a counter-protest by Jamaat-e-Islami demanded the release of the convicted persons by organising violent strikes around the country. They were known as hartals. In the midst of all the street chaos and protesters and hartals and constant traffic noises, I had a moment of revelation when I came to realise that there were no women in the street. I have never been more aware of my gender until I walked the streets of Dhaka for the first time. I was an anomaly to them, as much as the place itself was an anomaly to me. I met an artist in Brito's workshop, Alejandra, from Colombia. I don't know if it was the Latin blood that drew us together or just the simple fact that we were both women, but we constantly kept asking ourselves the same question. Where are they? Why aren't they out protesting like everyone else? Why aren't they even out working or walking in the street unaccompanied? We kept asking the locals. They all came up with the same answer. They're either at home doing domestic chores or working in the only place where they can get a job, the garment factories. There are over 4 million garment workers in Bangladesh, out of which 80% are women. Alejandra and I looked at each other, and we knew we had to unite forces to work on that one. We headed for the place where most of our clothes are made. It wasn't easy to get access to the garment factories in Dhaka, especially during times of political unrest. We were lucky enough to meet someone who knew someone else that allowed us to visit one of the many garment factories in Sabah, a district located northwest of Dhaka city. The factory was Rana Plaza, but that didn't mean anything to us at the time. For us, it was just another one of the many garment factories in Bangladesh. When we were granted access and the supervisors asked us what we wanted to do, we said that all we wanted was to speak to the workers. They got a bit suspicious, so we told them that all we were going to ask them was to think about what was happening in their country and to sing something to us with that in mind. The supervisor thought we were absolutely mad. "Is that all you want? A song?" They laughed at us, implying that the garment workers were incapable of doing anything apart from making clothes. "You can try," they said in disbelief, with a cheeky look in their faces. They sent us what they described as their best 7 workers while they were in their 30-minute lunch break. After that, the women had to go back to work, so the supervisor sent us 8 more workers, one by one, only allowing us about 5 minutes with each, so that we didn't interfere with the line production. Later on, one of the workers told me that the first 7 women were not in their lunch break. The night before we came, they were working all night to reach a target for one of the Western brands they made clothes for. When we arrived to Rana Plaza, the workers were having a short nap, trying to get their strength back before the afternoon shift.
Okay.
আচ্ছা
Sí, ella primero.
আপনি আগে যাবেন বলছে আপনি আগে যান ঠিক আছে ওকে
কোথায় যাও? এক দুই তিন বিধি তুমি বলে যাও আমি কার, দুটি মানুষ একটি মনের দাবিদার। বিধি তুমি বলে যাও আমি কার, দুটি মানুষ একটি মনের দাবিদার।
এই যে মনে করেন আমাদের হরতাল হলে অফিসে আসতে অনেক সমস্যা হয়ে যায়, গাড়ি পাওয়া যায় না, ঠিক টাইমে অফিসে আসতে পারি না। আর ঠিক টাইমে যদি অফিস না আসতে পারি হয়তো আমাদের দেখা যায় অনেক সময় লেট হয়ে গেলে 3-4 দিন লেট হলে একদিন অ্যাবসেন্ট হয়ে যায়, হাজিরা একদিন কেটে যায়। তারপরে মনে করেন এমনি চলাফেরা এই বাইরেতে কেউ সব দিকের অনেক অসুবিধা হয় হরতালে আমাদের, কিন্তু আমরা হরতাল একবারই চাই না। রাস্তায় মারামারি যানজট অনেক ভয় হয়ে আসতে, মারামারি তো অবশ্যই হয়, হরতালে ভাঙচুর হয়, মারামারি হয়। এই যে কিছুদিন আগে একটা হরতালে আমি অটো দিয়ে আসতেছি, এর পাশে একটা অটো কী করছে লাথি দিয়ে ফেলাই দিচ্ছে, অটোটাকে ওই দিক করছে, অনেকেই ভয় পেয়ে দৌড়ে নামে গেছে। এরকম অনেক অসুবিধা হয় হরতালে।
আমি তোমার পরাণ পাখি তুমি আমার জান, একদিন তোমায় না দেখিলে হারাইয়া যাই গান, বন্ধু আসো না কেন। আমি তোমার পরাণ পাখি তুমি আমার জান, একদিন তোমায় না দেখিলে হারাইয়া যায় গান, বন্ধু আসো না কেন ও বন্ধু।
মানে রাস্তাতে আসার সময় অনেক গন্ডগোল হয়, মনে করেন একদিন মানে লেট হইলে অ্যাবসেন্ট করে দেয়, মানে 10টায় ছুটি দিলে যাইতে পারি না একা একা, কিন্তু কেউ সাথে না থাকলে তো মনে করেন যাওয়া যায় না। সবসময় মনে করেন যাইতে গেলে কোনো জায়গায় যাইতে গেলে সমস্যা হয়, কেউ ছাড়া যাওয়া যায় না, কিন্তু অনেক সমস্যা থাকতে পারে মানে একা একা যাইতে, কিন্তু তাও যাওয়া যায় না। তার জন্য মানে রাস্তাঘাটে অনেক গন্ডগোল হয়, কিন্তু গন্ডগোলে একলা মেয়ে মানুষ কোনো জায়গায় যাইতে পারে না, একটা সমস্যা হলেও কোনো জায়গায় যাইতে পারে না।
অনেক সাধনার পরে আমি পেলাম তোমার মন, পেলাম খুঁজে ভুবনে আমার আপনজন। তুমি বুকে টেনে নাও না প্রিয় আমাকে, আমি ভালোবাসি 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 তোমাকে।
What were they thinking when we were looking at them, looking at us? It was a mutual stare of astonishment. All the colours and chaos and street noises around us vanished for a moment, and it was only them and us and the voice that came out from the invisible speakers chanting prayers. What were they thinking when us, 3 foreigners, stood across the street from them, staring at their mesmerizing gaze? One of the foreigners took a camera out and started taking photos of the man in front of us. The other foreigner took an audio recorder out and collected the sounds of the streets mixed with the prayers in the background. I just stood in the middle of the two, paralyzed by the whole experience, unable to document anything in any way, apart from relying on what I can remember. After recording the songs and statements from the garment workers, we presented a performance at Shilpa Kala Academy in Dhaka, where we amplified their voices using 3 megaphones during a public event. We wanted the voices to be heard in public, the voices of those who were unable to participate in demonstrations, the voices of those who were too busy working, too busy trying to survive, too busy fighting for equal rights.
যদি রাত পোহালে শোনা যেত বঙ্গবন্ধু মরে নাই, যদি রাজপথে আবার মিছিল হতো বঙ্গবন্ধুর মুক্তি চাই মুক্তি চাই মুক্তি চাই।
2 months after my return to Scotland, on the morning of 24th of April 2013, Rana Plaza collapsed. I couldn't watch the news. I couldn't look at the papers or look at any of the footage or photos that I took on my visit to the garment factory. All I could hear were their voices singing in my head over and over again.
আইরে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না, আইরে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না। সকাল 8টায় অফিস আসি, রাতের 10টায় বাসায় ফিরি, সকাল 8টায় অফিস আসি, রাতের 10টায় বাসায় ফিরি। আগে জানলে করতাম না চাকরি রে, গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না। এই রে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি আগে জানলে করতে আসতাম না। সকাল বিকাল পটাক শনে বকা দে যে পিএম সারে।
When Rana Plaza happened, ironically, I was in that road, not far away, like 10 or 20 minutes. So like when I heard about it, like people are running a 8-story building collapse or something, that what higher, and that was a market, and then it's pretty early, like 9, just 9, or maybe a little early, a little less. So like I just like let's go. So I'm come. My camera was full with photos, so there was no slot, no space. So I was over there, and then when I went over there, I saw that human are like like you know the like when like people give food to the birds like that spreading.
Yes.
So I saw like human falling from that building like that everywhere, human falling, and then just like they just smashed, and something happened. Like few people are crying over there, few people is crying over there. One woman was like no head, something all over there, and there's little people coming with a little hole hands out, and it was all white. And then like the building was collapsing at that time also, like we can feel the shake in the ground, and everybody was shouting. There was like 1,000 people, many thousand people within 5 minutes. I just went over there, I didn't understand, no, I was not listening anything, like what the hell, what is happening?
A year after the collapse, I decided to go back to Bangladesh. I had to see how it was possible for someone to decide to build an 8-story factory when the authorities had only approved to build a 5-story building for shops and offices, as planned by the architect. I had to see how it was possible for people to walk into their own death for only £24 a month. I had to see how it was possible for someone, in spite of all the warnings, to decide to destroy so many lives and dreams in a matter of seconds. I had to see that it was all real. As soon as I arrived in Dhaka, the first thing I wanted to do was to go back to Rana Plaza. The experience of stepping on that empty space is something I will never forget. Pieces of rocks entwined with torn clothes and human bones. Street children digging the site in search of iron to sell. A woman with a lost gaze, holding a photo of her missing daughter, hoping, still after a year, that someone can give her a clue as to where her daughter might be. I had to get out of there. It was too much to take. I looked back to the fence site, and I suddenly needed to find them. All 15 of them. I wanted to know their names, and I wanted to know if they were dead or alive or still missing. I couldn't explain it. They were all strangers to me. But somehow, when I stepped on that empty site, I felt a weight pulling me into the rubble, and I could hear the voices of the women singing, asking me to come back.
The problem was over there that like there was nobody knew how to rescue, but the general people, not the middle class from our comfort zone, they are not doing anything out of their comfort zone. So there was no middle class. Middle class was over there as a only viewers, and then those poor people, like quote unquote poor people, and then rescuers was only the the people who pull a rickshaw driver, van driver. They are the people who went inside, make a hole by their own hand, barehanded, went inside and bring out the rubble, sometimes pull out the dead body, sometimes allied person. I know someone who is committed suicide later, Noor. He committed suicide few days after Rana Plaza. He rescued like more than like 30 people alive, and many like 20 or 30 dead bodies he pulled, just, and then he was like, he was, from the very first day he became sick because the dead body smell was so intense, and he went inside and there was no oxygen. So last day he was in the newspaper. Everyone knows him. I went to him and then I asked him, "Oh, you did a great job." He said that I never thought about doing a great job. I thought like I could save one more. The police and the army people, they control the viewers only, but there was no action by them until till the evening. They were like silent. There was no rescue, nothing. They're like fire service was over there, army was over there, but I saw people died on my own eyes, like because there is no help, there is no cutter, the grinding machine to cut the wall, and then we were like putting our ears in the building, and we were hearing people from the inside like crying, shouting for help, and like crying like.
The search began. I contacted as many people as I could to ask if anyone recognized any of the 15 women that I met in my previous visit. I asked people who were involved with the rescue process of Rana Plaza. I asked doctors who worked at clinics where the survivors were taken. I asked activists and work union leaders who work with the garment workers. I even asked some of the Rana Plaza survivors. Eventually, after a very long search, someone recognized one of the women from my footage. She wasn't one of the 15 women I was looking for, but at least she worked on the same floor that I visited. I was hopeful that she could lead me to one of the 15. Her name was Asma.
Can you just tell me a little bit about what happened that day?
যেদিন মনে করেন মঙ্গলবারে তো ভাড়া দিছে, মঙ্গলবারে কিন্তু আমি যাবো না, পরে আঙ্গ জোর করে মনে করেন নিচ্ছে। আমার এই ছেলেটা এবার কইছে, ওই এই ছেলেটা আম্মু আজকে রানা প্লাজার ভাঙছে, তুমি যাও না। তো আমি মনে করছি কি 24 তারিখ আর কয়দিন আছে আমরা বেতনটা পাবো, বেতনের লেগে গেলাম। পরে একটুকুই মাইক দিয়ে বললো রানা প্লাজার বিদ্যুৎ নাই, তোমরা যাও গা। আমরা আয়া বললাম, ছুটি দিল। ছুটি দেওয়ার পরে আয়া বললাম কয় কি তোমরা আবার 2টা বাজে আইবা। তো মনে করেন বাসাতে গোসল মোসল করে গেলাম, খাওয়া দাওয়া করে গেলাম। যাওয়ার পরে কেউ রানা প্লাজার উপরে উঠে না, সবাই নিচে নাইমা পরে পরে আয়া পরে সবাই এমন করতেছে, সবাই ছুটি দিয়ে দিল। পরে বললো কি তোমরা কালকে সকালে আইবা 8টা বাজে। পরে আমি যাবো না, পরে 8টা বাজে গেলাম। যাওয়ার পরে মনে করেন 9:30 বাজে, 9:30 বাজে মনে করেন আমরা প্রোডাকশন লিখবো। এই টাইমে শুনলাম খালি তুফানের মতন মনে করেন বাইঙ্গা পড়ছে। বাইঙ্গার সাথে সাথে আবার জুতা আছিল আর আইডেন্টি কার্ড আছিল গলার ভিতরে। আইডেন্টি কার্ডটা আনবা গিয়ে মনে করেন পড়ে গেছি গা। এই যে পড়ে গেছে, মাথা সাথা আঘাত পায়, রক্ত মক্ত পড়ে এই যে পড়ছি, এক কাইতে আসছিলাম। তারপর মনে করেন 3 দিন ভিতরে আনলাম খালি হই আল্লাহ বাঁচাও বাঁচাও এইটুকুই কইলাম, আর পানি চাইলাম। পরে লাস্টের দিন পানি আর পাই না। পরে এক ছেলে আবার এতটুকু একটা বাড়ি আছে, বাড়ির ভিতরে পেশাব করছে। পরে আমি তো মনে করেন বেশি আমার ভিতরে অক্সিজেন দিয়ে রাখতে 3 দিন।
I showed Asma the photos of the 15 women I was looking for, on the off chance that she recognized some of them.
এটা আছে, আর এই যে ইতি, এটার নাম হলো ইতি, এটাও মারা গেছে। এটা নাই, এটা মারা গেছে। এটাও মারা গেছে, এটা নাই। এটা আছে, এটা জীবিত আছে, ওই স্টানানো থাকে। আর এটা মায়ও আমার সাথে মারা গেছে, মাও মারা গেছে।
Asma still hasn't been able to go back to work. The rescue team pulled her by the head to take her out of the rubble, causing severe injuries in her neck and left arm. She has received a small payment from the government for child support. Asma and her 11-year-old son have been living on this money for the past year, but it will soon run out. She's still waiting for compensation from the owners of the factory and the foreign companies responsible for the tragedy.
Garment workers are the new labor force and they are more organized labor force. In our country, I think it is the most important organized labor force. So if we want to do something in our country, we think that we have to work within workers. This sector is very much related with our economy and it's a big influence in our economy, garments. So the owner, the government, everybody is highly conscious about this sector. And we know in different places, owner maintain paid leader, they have their goons, so it's not so easy to work with workers. There's huge risk, huge threat all the time.
Yeah. Asma wanted to show me the pond. I've heard of that place. When the rescue finished, 20 days after Rana Plaza collapsed, the authorities had to clean up the site. They knew that nobody would survive for more than 3 weeks, so it was time to bury their catastrophe. The strategy was to use heavy construction equipment to push everything into a pond that was next to Rana Plaza. Concrete, torn clothes, bricks, arms, rods, shoes, bits of columns, legs, pieces of sewing machines, skulls. The excavator's arm dragged everything into the pond. The water wasn't deep enough to host an 8-story building. The pond was soon transformed into a mound, and to avoid turning the mound into a mountain, the remainder of the debris was taken to what the locals known as the dump, located a couple of miles away from Rana Plaza. Family members of the missing victims still frequent that place with the hope of finding bones of their loved ones in order to prove their matching DNA and receive compensation from the government.
First 3 days, I was so in the Rana Plaza. I didn't imagine that all the rescued person will go where in a hospital. I didn't knew the Anna medical name at that time. The whole day I was so isolated. I was like, what the fuck happening? So all the 2 days I was like insane. I was like, one more life to save. That was like everybody was more towards at that time. So I didn't know where all the dead bodies was going. I'm seeing like rescuers are pulling out the dead bodies and then these dead bodies are going where. So after 3 days, somebody told me all the dead bodies are piled up in Rana Plaza in Odachand High School for the relatives to identify. So I went over there in the 3rd day. That was my second shock in Rana Plaza. I saw dead bodies in that veranda. That balcony is so big from here to that end of the road, and all the dead bodies was like. This is like weird for me. Like I never imagined like such dead bodies. I started counting how many. I lost counting in the middle because it was so. And then I can tell you that like at that time like the crying was automatic. My heart was not like getting pain or anything, but the eyes was so like I was not seeing anything with my viewfinder. There was tears coming out, not because of like somebody died, because of just the numbers. It was so messy. And then I saw like the little school kids working as volunteer with gloves, sometimes without gloves, like helping the rescue, helping the families to identify their family members. Within 2 or 3 days, few dead bodies were so messed up, no head, no leg. That was the scenario that they were trying to figure it out by their identity card, by their vanity bag, by their shoes, by their jewelries, by their hair. Like everybody was shouting.
Asma promised to find out some names and phone numbers of the women I was looking for. Unfortunately, she got very ill after my visit. I went to see her and she was in bed with a fever and an empty stomach. Her neighbors were looking after her. She said she was really sorry, but she wasn't going to be able to help me. I said not to worry. She would help me by getting better. That would be enough for me. I held her fragile hand and said goodbye. I never saw Asma again. My time in Dhaka was running out. I only had a few days left and I still hadn't managed to find anyone. I kept looking for the women in the streets of Savar, in the markets, in the local buses, in front of Rana Plaza. My hope withered with every day that passed. I kept wondering if I was feeling the way I was, having only spent a few minutes with these women the year before. What would their mothers, that spent a lifetime with them, have felt like after the collapse? What did their sons and daughters go through when they were trying to find their lost parents? What did their sisters and brothers and husbands and wives feel as they held up photos of their missing loved ones day and night as a last resort to find them?
The media, they circulated the news of Rana Plaza hues. They circulated it everywhere. Every media showed every day what was happening that time. And so it's create a sympathy for the victims, and many people, our friends, well-wisher, family members, they give us money. And we thought that it's one kind of emergency support. So when a big part of our workers, they become affected, and we feel that we have to give them this money as a support. But we don't think that money is the only solution, and we don't think that as a political organization, we don't believe it that it is our duty to give them money. Their rights is getting compensation from owner and government, but owner and government and international buyer, they make this process too much delay. And within this period, like 1 year, different organization, different people, many individuals, NGOs, they gave support to workers. They gave money as a help, but this long-term help somehow make a problem, I think. Because all the workers who are not that much affected, they also, few of them are also always making lists for getting help. So they are moving one place to another place for getting money. But I think these things make them like a beggar.
Yeah.
And they lost their self-respect.
Yeah.
And they cannot think that when they get money, they cannot get scope to think that they need to do struggle against the responsible person who did this, or for what reason the collapse happened. So they are not that much interested. They will be not that much interested in struggle.
The phone rang 3 days before my departure from Dhaka. It was Mr. Sujan from the Bangladesh Garments and Industrial Workers Federation. He said he found 3 of the 15 women I was looking for, and the 3 of them were alive. Shohagi had just gone back to her village. She couldn't cope with working in a garment factory again, and she was unable to find a job in a different field. Since I was leaving so soon, it was not possible to meet her. Her village was far from Dhaka. However, the other 2, Mukhta and Dilora, were still in Savar and were very keen to see me again.
most of the workers, they don't work only 8 hours. They work more than 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, sometimes. So you have only one weekend to meet with them, but many factories, they don't give weekend also, no holidays. So, and different places like Savar, Gazipur, Bangla Motor, different area have different weekend. So one worker cannot meet another worker. It's a problem. And there is a trade union right in paper, in theory, but when any activists want to make a union, if they really work with workers, or if they really work in for the workers' interest, then they cannot get scope to. And workers don't have any weekend, any time to sit and to talk each other, to learn labor law, so they don't know how to make a strike. Most of the time they do strike spontaneously. So when they do any strike in factory, that time the owner said, you did a illegal strike, so I can fire you anytime. So these are the things going on.
The bus ride from Dhaka to Savar was crowded and clammy. It was over 40 degrees hot. I was sitting in the area next to the driver. There are no real seats in that part of the bus, only a big cube made of wood or metal covered with a blanket. That's where all the women sit. They are not allowed to take the normal seats unless they're accompanied by a man. Many garment workers take this bus to get to work every day. They sit quietly with their heads wrapped up in colorful fabrics. The ride lasts for at least an hour, depending on traffic. For other garment workers, the ones that live in Savar, this bus represents freedom. They only take it once a week or every other week on their day off, when they are able to make a trip to the city and clear their minds from the noise of sewing machines and saturated patterns and unattainable targets for clothing companies that they will never be able to shop in.
So there was one incident when like a gun worker was found, but if they want to rescue her, they need to cut one leg. So they call a doctor. The doctor came, and the doctor was little not willing to go inside, but it was his oath or job or anything. He went inside. It was risky, very risky. So he started cutting her leg, and she was shouting like hell. We are listening it from the outside, like little sound, like that. So the doctor was listening, but when he cut her leg half, and then the bone, and then there was a beam, beam collapsed little. The doctor was like so afraid because it was pressuring him, and then it was pressuring him. Now it is little more. So he just came out, and then she was bleeding. And then all those other rescuer was like Kakon and then Himu, they were over there. They were like, what the fuck? And then now she will die just breathing within 10 minutes. Because and doctor was not, no, nothing will happen, you going. So they were saying, but he was not. Like he just left the spot. And then one person take the saw, went inside and then cut that leg and come out with her. And then he gave it to her, and then they took her to hospital, and he was vomiting like hell. I was like standing and seeing her vomiting. Seeing his vomiting. There was no food. He didn't eat anything. There was like only water.
I arrived to Savar, and I was sitting in an improvised wooden bench next to a petrol station. That's where Delora was going to meet me. I was nervous. I kept wondering, what condition was she going to be in? Was she going to be walking? Would she have both of her arms? Was she going to be able to smile? The rowdy questions in my head were interrupted by a figure that appeared from around the corner, wrapped in a black fabric with yellow and orange flowery patterns. When I saw her, she had definitely aged, but she still had a big smile on her face. Without thinking, I gave her a big hug, trying to convince myself that she was real, trying to feel if her body was really alive.
বেতন দেওয়া হবে, সামনে মাসে বেতন আটকানো হবে। তো মনে করেন এরকম অনেকেই বেতনের জন্য যাইতেই হবে, না গেলে মনে করেন বেতন না পেলে যে বাড়িওয়ালা মানবে না, দোকানদার মনে করেন আমরা তো গরিব মানুষ, আমাদের পেটটা চলতে পারবো, তাই না? তারপর সেটা মনে করে গেছি। তারপর আমরা তো আর জানি না এভাবে ভেঙে দেবো। আমার হাজবেন্ড আমার বলছে কি, তুমি অসুস্থ, যাওয়ার দোকান নাই, তুমি 1টা বাজে গিয়া ওভার টাইমে নিয়ে এসো, যদি দে। তারপরেও আবার যেমন লাঞ্চের কাছে ফোন নাম্বার ছিল, উনি ফোন দিয়েছে যে সবার দিয়েও হবে, আমাকেও একটা হবে, হয়তো 1টা বাজে ছুটি দেওয়া হবে, চলে যাবো, সমস্যা তো। ওইটা মনে করে আমরা গেছি। যাওয়ার পরে তো অনেকেই ভিতরে ঢুকবে না, তখন রানা এসব দাঁড়াইয়া বাইরে দাঁড়াইয়া বললো কি যে আমরা ইঞ্জিনিয়ার নিয়ে চেক আপ করছি, কোনো সমস্যা নাই, আমরা 15 দিন কাজ করি। তখন 15 দিনে কাজ করে কথা বলার পরে দিয়ে সবাই কেউ, তারপরেও সবার মনে কেউ তার ইচ্ছে করে মরতে যেতে পারে না আর কি, সবাই না করে মনে বাঁধাবে এরকম করে বলার পরে উপরে নিচে, উপরে নেওয়ার পরে আবার পিএমজি আমরা মিটিং করি। মিটিং করার পরে মিটিংয়ের মধ্যে বললো যে তোমরা কাজ করো, ওরা তো বলছে ইঞ্জিনিয়ার দিতেছে, কোনো সমস্যা নেই। অর্থাৎ যদিও কোনো সমস্যা হয়, সবারই যেরকম হবে আমাদেরও তাই হবে, একদিক না একদিন উদ্ধার হবেই। এটুকু বলার পরে দেন সবাই কাজের মেশিন পরিষ্কার করে মেশিনে বসতাম আমরা। বসার পরে দিয়ে মনে করি কারেন্ট চলে গেলো, জেনারেটর স্টার্ট দেওয়া। এখন যারা মনে করেন দৌড় দিচ্ছে, এটা একো 15 একো জেনারেটর ছিল, আমাদের কোনো ছিল না। যখন জেনারেটর স্টার্ট দিল তখন সবাই দৌড় দিতে শুরু করলো। যারা মনে করেন দৌড়ে সিঁড়িত গেছে ওরাই বেশিরভাগ মারা গেছে, আর যারা দৌড় দিছে মনে করেন পিলারটা এসে পড়ছে জাগের গায়ে, ওরা হাত পাও কাটা গেছে, অথচ জাগরে বাইর করার মতো কোনো সম্ভব নাই, ওরাই ভিতরে মারা গেছে। আর যারা মনে করেন মেশিনের চিপায় কি টেবিলের নিচে ছিল কি যে জায়গায় কোনো পিলার ছিল না ওইখানে ছিল, ওরাই কিছু কিছু বাচ্চা সুস্থভাবে, ওগুলো হাত পাও কোনো কাটা ছিল না, সেরকম তাদের মনে ছিল।
মেশিনের আশপাশে ছিল, they just broke the window and took her out.
ও আমার পাশে ছিল,
She was just next to her.
মারা গেছে।
She passed away.
পিলার পড়ছে, পিলার পড়ছে,
She ran away. When it was breaking down, she ran and she was under a pillar. And one big pillar was fall down. So,
এই ছেলেটা মারা গেছে। মনে করেন আমাকে 5 তলার বেশিরভাগই মারা গেছে।
আপনি কদিন পরে উদ্ধার করছেন?
আমি ওই দিনে 11টা 10 মনে করেন 9টা 20 ভাঙিয়ে পড়ছে, 11টা 10 উদ্ধার করছে। আমার এই যে এই পায়ে এই চাইতে চাপ পাইছি এই হাতে, মনে করেন যে ধুলা বালির চোখ ভাগ্যে আল্লাহ একটাই যে এত বুড়া চোখ ময়লা, কিন্তু কারো চোখ নষ্ট হয়নি, এটি আল্লাহর কাছে অনেক শুকরিয়া। সঙ্গে সঙ্গে অন্ধকার হয়ে গেছিল,
অনেক ভিতরে পড়ছিলেন আপনি?
হ্যাঁ, ওই জানলার পাশে ছিলাম।
Delora has a 5-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. The entire family is dependent on her, since her husband was injured while he was doing construction work and is now unable to do his job. Delora, like Asma, is still recovering from her injuries and can't manage to do any physical labor. She received a small donation from the foreign buyers that has helped her and her family to get by in the past year. However, She's still waiting for compensation from the government and factory owners. Delora and her husband cannot read or write. They want to change that for their children, and they are worried that they won't be able to pay for their tuition in order for them to receive a good education. At the moment, the family barely has enough money to survive.
খুব ভালো লাগছে আশা খুশি হয়েছে খুব ভালো লাগছে আপনি আশা আমাকে দেখছেন অনেক ভালো লাগছে
I'm very happy too. I'm very happy to see you. I like it.
আপনি আশা আমাকে দেখছেন সেটা আমারও হ্যাপি লাগছে
After meeting Delora, I went to meet Mukhta. Her welcoming wasn't as warm as Delora's, and I soon understood why. When Rana Plaza collapsed, Mukhta was rescued after 3 hours. She didn't have many injuries, but when she went home, she realized that her sister and her sister's husband, who also worked at Rana Plaza, were missing. They were never found. Mukhta didn't want to speak much about it. It was too painful for her. One of her neighbors, Shahanara, who also survived Rana Plaza, was keen to tell me her story.
এদিন তো আমরা সকালে কেউ যাইবো না আমার বসে ফোন দেখায় কি আসো নাই বেতন পাইবা না এখন আমি গিয়ে বলছি সেদিন আমরা 60-এর কাজ করতেছি আমি আবার সিনিয়র অপারেটর বাকলে তা আমার বসে কয় কি যে সানা যায় যদি এই কাজ শিট মিললে মালিক কি কইছে যে মালিক যেটা সত্যি মালিক কি কইছে যে আজকে এই কাজ শিট মিললে 12 দিন লাগবে তাই যদি রানা প্লাজা নিয়ে যায় আমার বসে কইছে সে তো নাই মারা গেছে অনেক ভালো ছিল তারপরে আমার বসে বলে আমি কই কি আপনি না 12 বছর ধরে এই ফ্যাক্টরিতে চাকরি করেন কেমনে করেন তাহলে এই কথা যদি মালিকই কয় 12 বছর ধরে যে গার্মেন্টস যদি ভেঙে পড়ে আমাকে শীত মিলতে পারে কইছে বলি এবার আমার ভাই আমার কাছে আইছে আইসা ওমা আমার না ভয় লাগে আমি বাবা তোরা আমি বাড়িতে কইছি বাবা তুই যাইস নাই এখন তো বাড়িতেই দেবে না আমার কই আমার মাইয়ে 5 তলায় উঠতে পারছে কি আমি আর কথা পারবি না এর মধ্যে জেনারেটর গেছে আর যে জেনারেটর মানে কারেন্ট গেছে মাথায় খেলতে পারি না কারেন্ট গেছে জেনারেটর যে ছাড়ছে সেই ভেঙে পড়ছে আমি আবার মেশিনের সুইচটা বন্ধ করে দাঁড়াই রয়েছে এইভাবে আমি দাঁড়াইছিলাম বলে আমি বাঁচছি আরে এখন আমরা গিয়ে পারব না যে টার্গেট দেয় এটা আমরা পাই উঠি না মধ্যে আমি এক জায়গায় ঢুকছিলাম টার্গেটে ঠিলায় আর বেতার যন্ত্রণা ওইটাই গেছি আমি 5 দিন এই বেতার জ্বালায় 5 দিন বাসায় রয়েছি অ্যাকশন করে গেছি আবার আমি রানা প্লাজা ঢুকি বলে কিছু কয় নাই তারপরে অ্যাকশন করে গেছি গিয়ে শুনি যে ওইটা ফাটন ধরছে আমি চিন্তা করলে আমি তো বাড়িতে লাঞ্চের টাইমে যে লাঞ্চ আছে ফুলাই এসে বেড়েছে
একবার চাপা খাইছে
নাইট তো রানা প্লাজা অনাব্যক্ত হতো কিন্তু 5 তলায় নাইট আমরা প্রতিদিন করতাম একসাথে 8টা নাইট করছে আর ওই ওভার টাইম প্রায় 3টি পর্যন্ত কাজ করেছি প্রায় 3টি পর্যন্ত তো নাইট করি ওই 3টি পর্যন্ত 5টার পরেতে 3টি পর্যন্ত ওভার টাইম
And then they finish at 3 and they go home at 3.
And yeah, or they're sleeping over there.
They sleep and they keep
And next morning they start again. That's how you are wearing this.
Yeah, they probably made this. You made this.
1,134 people died in Rana Plaza. Out of those lives, there were 234 unidentified bodies buried at Jurain graveyard in Dhaka. Up until now, the family members of only half of those unidentified bodies have been able to claim compensation from the government. The rest of the families are still waiting for the DNA test results in order to prove their relationship to the victims.
So when the collapse happened, we asked many family members why you send your family member where you knew that there is a collapse. They said that if he or she will not go, they will not get their attendance bonus or salary. Attendance bonus is very little, like 200 taka. It's less than $3. They send their daughter or son for that attendance bonus. So we live in a country where less than $3 matter for our workers. So
that's how much their life costed, no?
So they need to, maybe today the victim's family, they got support from different organizations, but one day this $3 is very much important for them.
This is Mukta's room. Well, not only Mukta's room, but also her mom's and nephew's room. Actually, this is Mukta's family's one-room home. Most garment workers live like this, in a compressed space with no private lives. Around this room, there are 7 other rooms, all belonging to garment workers. Out of this particular community of 8-room homes, 11 people died in Rana Plaza. The whole place is plagued with sorrow, and it's only the toddlers that are still able to laugh, since they are too young to understand.
This is like new slavery, you know. They pay so less. How all the USA and then all those Europeans also sophisticated people tolerate this? When they buy their clothes, they understand that this is it's so cheap. They are buying it cheap because somebody is paying their life for it. So they should not buy cheap cloth anymore. They should go for fair trade if they have money. If they don't have money, that's another issue. You are doing your fashion, man, and for your fashion, people are dying. That's not okay. Even a garments worker do not die in a building collapse or accident. They will definitely die soon, because the kind of nutrition they get, the kind of work age they are in the work within the age, it's not okay. The kind of income they have, it's not enough for their whole family to feed, and they don't have enough nutrition. They work for sometimes they start from 8 and end at the night 1, continuously over time, just to get few more thousand taka. And then they run a whole family. This is not a solution for them. Even they don't die in a bad working condition, they will die soon.
Change. How to change the economic structure of an entire nation? How to change the economic structure of an entire world? Does everything need to be destroyed so that we can rebuild it again from scratch? Is it already self-destructing by its own system? How many more shattered buildings can we hide in the lakes? Efforts have been made by activists, worker unions, artists. But how can we change the corrupt system that we are all part of? Owners, brands, governments, consumers, citizens. Is it possible to change before the next Rana Plaza crumbles down the dreams and lives of thousands again? Garment workers in Bangladesh, with the help of activists and trade unions, are starting to speak up. After Rana Plaza, there have been more protests demanding justice for the workers. Their voices are getting louder, but still not loud enough to be heard on the other side of the planet, where Westerners keep supporting the corrupt garment industry. One individual cannot change the world, but one individual can change a collective to prompt change in the world. I thought that if I could amplify one voice in a country where the voices of garment workers are muted and Westerners choose to consume products coated by odorless sweat and colorless blood, if one voice could tell her story in one of the countries actively engaged in 21st century slavery under the guise of supporting social economical development, if only that voice could be heard by those who can hear beyond the borders of their comfortable lives, then, maybe then, we can experience social change. I went back to revisit that voice and propose something to her.
I come to speak to you today because after the factory collapsed, I've been wanting to do something about it. And you know that I'm an artist, a visual artist. In Scotland, where I live, I have booked a space in a gallery during a human rights festival in October. And I would like to bring someone who survived the accident to this space so that you can tell your story and people can listen to it. So I've come here today to invite you to come with me in October. So you, if you want, you will come with me for 10 days. I will arrange your flights, I will arrange food, I will give you some fee for your work.
এখন হচ্ছে যাকে নিয়ে যাবে তো এই হচ্ছে ঘটনা যে ওই জায়গায় লোক থাকবে এবং কিন্তু আপনার এই পুরা যাওয়া লাগবে একা একা, আপনার সঙ্গে কেউ যাবে। আপনার সাহস আছে একা একা যাওয়ার? She's saying that she's I told her that all the way you have to go alone. It's okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right.
After Delora agreed to come to Glasgow, I had to go back the following day to ask permission of her family, since most women in Bangladesh don't have the freedom to take these decisions on their own. Both her husband and her brother agreed to let her come with me. Delora will be arriving to the UK in October to tell her story during a human rights film festival. I'm hoping that her voice will change anyone who listens to her in the same way that those 15 voices have changed me. I can still hear them in my sleep, singing about the garment factory, about their mothers, about rivers running through the villages where they grew up. I can still hear their voices in my sleep, calling me, asking me to come back.
অনেক সাধনার পরে আমি পেলাম তোমার মন, পেলাম খুঁজে ভুবনে আমার আপনজন। তুমি বুকে টেনে নাও না প্রিয় আমাকে, আমি ভালোবাসি ভালোবাসি
আপন হাতে জীবনে মরণে আধারে আলোতে থাকবো তোমার সাথে বিধাতায় আমাকে তোমার জন্যে গড়েছে আপন হাতে জীবনে মরণে আধারে আলোতে থাকবো তোমার সাথে তুমি বুকে টেনে নাও না প্রিয় আমাকে আমি ভালোবাসি 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 তোমাকে অনেক সাধনার পরে আমি পেলাম তোমার মন পেলাম খুঁজে ভুবনে আমার আপনজন যাবে না কখনো ফুরিয়ে যাবে না আমার ভালোবাসা তোমাকে পেয়েছি পেয়েছি আমারও বাঁচার নতুন আশা যাবে না কখনো ফুরিয়ে যাবে না আমার ভালোবাসা তোমার